Hello, how are you? I'm a little tired. Sit down, please. I'd like to speak English today too, to improve my speaking skill. Let's get it started. Today, it is August 26th, 2023. It's on Saturday and sunny outside. How are you spending Saturday? Do you have a plan for today? Do you have a work or a school today? Or do you have a day off today? It hinges on your schedule. It's dependent on your schedule. It depends on your schedule. When I was a high school student, I sometimes went to school even on Saturdays to take the preliminary class in preparation for tests. Or to take preliminary examinations. Or I also went to school on Saturdays too, in order to have the practice for the club activity. Which club activity did you belong to? Or you didn't belong to any club activities? Did you go straight to home as soon as the class finished? Or did you stop by shopping mall, stops, stores, or anywhere? Did you commute to your school by bike, bus, train, ferry, or on foot? I almost fainted to realize that I failed the examination many times. I was about to faint when I realized that I had failed in the examination. I was on the verge of fainting, realizing that I had failed in the examinations. But some songs, messages, encouraged me to try it again, and I finally got it, passed it. I was on the brink of fainting to realize that I had failed in the examination. Failed in the examination. Faint. I was about to faint by realizing that I had failed in the examination. I was about to faint. I almost fainted to realize that I had failed in the examination. I almost fainted to realize that I had failed in the examination. Faint, 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 faint. I almost fainted to know the unbelievable news. I almost fainted to the unbelievable news. I almost fainted to the unbelievable news. Fainted. The boxer fainted after getting the strong blow from the opponent, by the opponent. The boxer fainted, but soon came to. The boxer fainted when he got the blow from the opponent, but soon after he came to, became conscious. Have you experienced faint? Have you gone through faint? What does it feel like to faint? What does it feel like to faint? Because I haven't fainted. Have you gone through faint? Have you gone through faint? Have you experienced faint? Have you experienced faint by hearing shocking news? The unbelievable news led me to faint. The unbelievable news had me to faint. Faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. The patient soon came conscious, became conscious, grew conscious after the faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. The patient came to soon after the faint, immediately after the faint. The patient soon came to, became conscious after the faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. The patient became conscious soon after the faint. Faint, faint, faint. I was about to faint, just realizing that I had got tons of tasks to be done by the end of the month. I was about to faint, even when I imagined the tasks piled up on my desk. I was about to faint, even when I imagined the pile of tasks on my desk. Faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. The patient came to soon after the faint. Faint, 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 faint. I could hear a faint siren of the ambulance from the distance, and it was correct because I came across an ambulance. I could listen to subtle, minor, faint sound of the ambulance siren, and it was correct. I could realize it later. It was approaching towards me. Faint. If there is a faint possibility, you should try it. We should be humble, but sometimes we should also be bold and go for it. Because the chance might not come back again. Faint smell, faint evil spirits from the person. Faint possibility of the team winning the game against the champion, well-reputed team. Faint evil aura. Faint scary outcome. Possibility from the game. I felt something faint, unprecedented outcome of the game. I felt subtle, minor, faint. A scary atmosphere from the game, stadium, arena. Faint mist and fog, faint mist and fog, faint mist and fog. It is sunny except for faint mist and fog. Faint, faint mist and fog, faint, subtle, faint, subtle. Faint mist and fog. Faint amount of money. The champion went to Tokyo with a faint amount of money when he went to Tokyo in order to become a champion. And he made it with a lot of hard working. Faint light. Faint light. Each time I bought a new solar light because it's getting dim. It's only emitting a faint light, which is almost invisible to the naked eye. Each time I bought a new solar light because it's just emitting a faint light which is almost invisible to the naked eye. If you look at closer, you can barely recognize it is shining. Each time I bought a new solar light because the light is emitting a faint light which is almost invisible to the naked eye. If you have a closer look at it, you can detect the faint light. Faint. Faint fog and mist, faint fog and mist, faint, subtle, faint, subtle, faint, faint fog and mist. I felt something strange and bad luck in the game, fainted. I felt bad luck faintly in the game, and my prediction was correct. The well-reputed team lost to the very weak team in the game. I felt something bad luck in the game faintly. I felt something bad luck faintly. I felt something bad luck. I felt bad luck. I felt bad luck faintly. faintly, 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 faintly. Faintly, 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 faintly. I felt a little faint. I faintly felt bad luck, even before the start of the game. Unfortunately, as I predicted, the previous champion lost to the weak team in the game. I could hear the ambulance siren faintly from the distance, and it was correct. I came across it. I ran into the ambulance later. Faintly, 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 faintly. It tasted faintly wine from the cuisine. I faintly felt painful from the injection, but I felt almost nothing, meaning the technique of the doctor was very good. I almost felt nothing from the injection, but I felt faintly the pain from the injection. I faintly felt the painful pain from the injection. I faintly felt the pain from the injection. I faintly felt the pain from the injection. Faintly, faintly. I faintly felt the pain from the injection. I faintly felt the pain from the injection. I faintly felt the pain from the injection. I faintly felt the pain from injection. Faintly, faintly, faintly. Now that we are surrounded by many, lots of information, it's very important to confine us to particular things in order to concentrate us on the things we have to do. There are many distractions distracting us from concentrating on the things we have to do. Turning off smartphones will be one of the strategies to concentrate us on the duties we have to work on. If there is nothing to do except for the work we have to work on, we can confine us to the one. So getting rid of distractions is one of the keys to keep us motivated. confining us to the ones we have to work on can be very difficult because there are many distractions, losing our motivation. Confining us to the ones we have to work on can be very difficult because there are many distractions, such as smartphones, computers, and when it comes to going home, you might be absorbed into shops, restaurants, and so on. Many distractions. Many parents will confine the time for video games to particular time, maybe 1 hour or 30 minutes. Many parents of kids will confine the time for video games to particular time, maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour. After graduating the school, I confined my study only to English. Now I can devote much of my time to the study. It's good because I don't have to study other subjects, meaning I can improve only English. I'm happy that I can devote much of my time to the English study I am interested in. Confine, confine, confine. Confines, bordered by fences, fragile fences. Is it working? Are the fences bordering the borders working? Are the fragile fences along the confine working? Are the fragile fences along the border are working? Are the fragile fences along the confines working? Confine, confine. Since I am not familiar with baseball, if the ball drops on the borderline, is it treated as fair or foul? And since I am not familiar with baseball, if the ball drops on the confine white line, is it treated as foul or fair? Confine, 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 confine. Confine, confine, white confine lines, confine. Are the fences along the confines working? Are the fragile fences built along the confines working? Are the fragile fences built along the confines working? Are the fragile fences built along the confines working? Confine, border, confine, confine, confine. The tourist spot is famous for three confines existing in the one spot, on the one spot. The tourist spot is famous for three confines coming together. The tourist spot is famous for three confines of prefectures coming together. Confines. The tourist spot is famous for the confines of three prefectures coming together. Confine. The tourist spot is famous for the confines of three prefectures coming together. The tourist spot is famous for the confine of three prefectures coming together. Confine, 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 confine. Confine. Confine, 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 boundary, confine, boundary, confine, boundary, confine, boundary, confine, boundary, border, confine, border, confine, border, confine, confine. The white line indicates the confine, whether the ball will be foul or fair or hit. The white line will be used as confine. The white line will be used as confine in the baseball game. The customer is of his two minds whether he will buy the product. He is still in the border, confine. The customer is still in the confine of whether or not he will buy the product or not. The customer is in the confine of whether or not he will buy the product or not. The promising customer is still in the confine of whether or not he will buy the product or not. Confine. companies or shops or sellers will set the prices of their products at the prices of whether or not the buyers will buy or not. Companies, sellers, or other shops will set the prices of the products at the confine of whether or not the buyers will buy or not, in order to get the maximized profits, in order to make the profits maximized, in order to earn as more money as possible, in order to in a bid to earn as possible money as possible, in order to earn as possible profit as possible, they can, in order to earn as much money as possible, in order to earn as much money as they can. Confine. Many companies, shops, and sellers will set the prices of the products at the confine of whether or not the buyers will buy or not, in order to secure as much money as they can. Confine, border. Many companies, shops, and sellers will set the prices of the product at the confines of whether or not the buyers will buy or not, in order to secure as much profits as they can. Confine. If the products are limited and confined versions, some people tend to buy them easily, even if they are a little bit expensive, because some people are weak to limited version of products. They find them very rare, valuable, and so on. Confined version. Only a handful of confined executives know the result and the project. The plants are brought up only in a confined environment. Many things must be met in order for the breeder to rear the plants. The plants can be brought up only in a confined environment. The plants can be brought up only in a confined environment. The plants can be brought up only in a confined environment. Confined. Confined genre of the menu. Confined genre of music. Confined. We could choose the menu from the confined genre. We could choose the confined menus of the breakfast. We could choose only the confined menus of the breakfast. Confined. confined, confined diet, confined diet in order to lose weight, confined diet in order to manage your health. In the hospital, your meal will be confined in order to treat your disease. Can you confine your diet to the ones recommended by doctors on your own? Is your will strong enough? Can you confine the diet you eat to the ones recommended by your doctor? Is your will strong enough? I think many people don't have such strong will. The life schedule for the examinees will be almost confinement into their rooms, studying whole day in preparation for the examination. The daily schedule for examinees, I think, will be almost like a confinement in a room studying for whole day, or confinement in the school studying whole day. The daily schedule for examinees is almost like a confinement in a room for study in preparation for Kyotsu test and entrance examinations, which are usually held after Kyotsu test. Confinement. Confinement. The daily schedule for examinees, especially the third-year student of high schools, is almost like a confinement in a room or classroom studying for a long time, almost whole day. Confinement. 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 The examinees in the venue for 3 hours without using smartphones. Confinement. Examinees were released from the confinement after 3 hours, not years. Confinement. All of the examinees withstand the confinement of about 8 hours from morning to evening in order to enter universities, in order to take Kyotsu test. Confinement of the hostage. Confinement of the hostage. The defendant was sentenced to lifetime imprisonment for the confinement and some other evil crimes. The accused was sentenced to lifetime imprisonment in prison for evil crimes, including confinement of the hostage. Are you as indecisive as ever? I used to be more indecisive in conclusion, working around the restaurant for about 1 hour, which I regret wasting my time. So I decided to compromise to some extent and enter a restaurant, even if it is a little bit expensive. Because just working around the restaurant for nothing for 1 hour is waste of time, isn't it? Yes. Inconclusive. Inconclusive. Just talking in the meeting might be useless. Inconclusive. All of the treatments for my disease is inconclusive. It is not the treatment to eradicate at all, just a temporal treatment, temporal measure. I hope miracle medicine which eradicate my disease will be developed, invented as soon as possible, as early as tomorrow. Inconclusive. All of the treatments for my disease are not inconclusive. They are just temporary measures. Temporary measures. All of the treatments for my disease are not inconclusive. They are just temporary measures. Inconclusive. Only the unearthed pottery are not enough to prove that the culture flourished in the region. Inconclusive. Only the reasonable prices of the apartment is inconclusive to decide to stay in. Only the reasonable price is inconclusive to decide to stay in. There are more factors we should take into consideration. There are more elements and factors I'd like to take into account. Inconclusive. Only reasonable price of the apartment is inconclusive to decide to stay in. There are more factors I'd like to take into account. I'd like to take into consideration. Inconclusive. What if you hit the lottery? What will you use? What will you use the money for? Paying back the debts? Buying a house or cars? Or do you have a foreign trip? Do you keep traveling? Or just deposit the money into your bank account? Or donate most of the money, or all of them to the charity entity or city hall, or prefectural office or the government, or nothing. What if an angel appeared in front of you now? What if I succeeded in flying in the air like the birds from now? What if I could fly like birds in the sky? How would you react? What if you could communicate with the people in Edo period? What if you could run as fast as the speed of light? What if you could move to the Saturn in 1 second? I tend to be pessimistic recently. I should change my mind. It is said the health between mentality and physicality are connected. So if we are physically ill, we tend to be mentally ill too, as far as I know. So having an exercise and becoming strong physically will be one of the treatments to cope with ment, ment, mental ill, maybe mental ill. Sentimental. Do you like sentimental songs? Sentimental ballads. Which do you prefer? Rock music or sentimental ballads? Both. I sometimes obsessed with sentimental ballads, but especially I like happy songs, happy, glad songs, and sometimes sentimental ballads. I am absorbed in sentimental ballads sometimes. I am sometimes a lot absorbed in sentimental ballads, obsessed with sentimental ballads. I am sometimes occasionally absorbed in sentimental ballads. Sentimental ballads. Sentimental ballads. Sentimental ballads. Sentimental. 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 Whenever I listen to the melody, I am inclined to be sentimental. Whenever I listen to the sad melody, I am apt to be sentimental. Whenever I watch the movie, I tend to be sentimental because it's so sad. The movie is composed of a very sad story. The movie is based on the real sad story, which never fails to touch me, which never fails to touch me, moves me, which never fails to touch me, which never fails to move me. Sentimental. Whenever I listen to the song, I never fail to be sentimental. I never fail to be sentimental. Whenever I listen to the song, I never fail to be sentimental. Whenever I watch the movie, especially with the BGM, I tend to be sentimental. I am inclined to be sentimental. I am apt to be sentimental. 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 Sentimental songs. Sentimental ballads. I am sometimes or frequently absorbed in sentimental ballads. Sentimental ballads. Sentimental songs. Which sentimental ballads do you like? Which sentimental ballads do you recommend me that I listen to? I want you to introduce me. I want to introduce sentimental ballads in your country. Your recommendations. I'd like you to introduce sentimental ballads in your country. I'd like you to introduce sentimental ballads in your country. your recommendations. Sentimental, sentimental, sentimental. And whenever I listen to the songs, I tend to be sentimental, sentimental, sentimental. Whenever I watch the movie, especially with the BGM, I never failed to feel sentimental. I never failed to be sentimental. I never failed to become sentimental. I never failed to become sentimental. I never failed to get 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 sentimental. Sentiment. Public sentiment. Don't fuel public sentiment. Don't fan public sentiment with false information. With false information. Don't fan public sentiment with false information. Sentiment. Sentiment. Don't fuel public sentiment with false information. Sentiment. Public sentiment. 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 My parents are usually busy with no place for sentiment. My parents are super busy with work without the place for sentiment. Sentiment, 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 sad sentiment, happy sentiment. Sentiment, sentiment. Sentiment, 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 emotion, sentiment, public sentiment. Public sentiment has been resented, affected. Public sentiment shouldn't be fueled by false information. Public sentiment shouldn't be fueled, fanned by false information. Sentiment. Sentiment. I express my sentiments, including happiness, sadness, anger, and so on. We express our sentiment by expression, tone of voice, attitude, and so on. We exhibit our sentiment with expression on our face, tone of voice, attitude, and so on. Sentiment. We exhibit our sentiment with various ways, including face expression, attitude, tone of voice, and so on. Sentiment. We display our sentiment. We display our sentiment with various ways, such as face expression, tone of voice, gesture, attitude, and so on. Sentiment. Public sentiment. We display, exhibit, express our sentiment through various ways: face expression, tone of voice, attitude, gesture, messages, and so on. Sentiment. Public sentiment. Public sentiment. Public sentiment. Emotion. Public sentiment. Public sentiment. Public sentiment. Public sentiment. Controlling public sentiment is not good. Media is good at controlling public sentiment. Media are good at controlling public sentiment through information. News. Media are good at controlling public sentiment through news. Although I don't know if it is true or not. I don't know whether it is true or not. Sentiment. Public sentiment. Angry public sentiment. Public sentiment has been affected by media a lot. public sentiment has been affected by media a lot. The way of news have been affecting public sentiment very much. The biased way of news, the biased way of news, the biased way of news having an effect on public sentiment. Public sentiment. The biased way of news have been having an effect on public sentiment. The biased way of news have been having an effect on the public sentiment. The biased way of news have been having an effect on the public sentiment. Public sentiment, 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 public sentiment. Some people of strong emotions stood up and applauded to the performance. Some people of strong emotions stood up and applauded to the performance. Some people tend to be emotional when they drink alcoholic beverages. Emotional moment of the movie touched me. Emotional moment of the movie moved me. Emotional. An emotional quarrel between the couple. Emotional scene of the movie. Emotional scene of the program. Some people tend to be emotional with alcohol. Some people tend to be get emotional. Singing a song emotionally is very important, but deviating from the pitches, basics, and other rules are not good. We should sing emotionally after being able to sing the song correctly. Singing a song emotionally is very important, but following the pitches, rules, and other things are more important to sing the song very well. Emotionally. The victims were craving for the release emotionally. The kid was claiming for his innocence emotionally. The kid claimed emotionally that he didn't mean to late for school. There were some reasons behind it. The kid claimed emotionally that he didn't mean to be late for school. But there were some events happened which prevented him from going to school in time for the deadline. Emotionally. Emotionally. emotionally, emotionally, the kid insisted that he had nothing to do with the incident emotionally. The kid insisted, asserted, claimed that he had nothing to do with the incident emotionally. The accused claimed that he had nothing to do with the incident emotionally. Emotionally. Excuse me, this is my reservation. 3 days, yes. I paid beforehand by on credit card. Okay. Reservation. Do you have a reservation? I'm sorry, I don't have a reservation, but is there a vacant single room for tonight? Let me see. Yes, there are some single rooms available. There are 3 types. The one with a standard size of bed, and the next is a double-sized bed, and the third is queen-sized bed. Which do you want? The price increases according to the size of the bed. The standard one is for $70, and the double bed sized one is for $100, and the queen size bed is for $1 million. Crazy. 1 million. Reservation. When you reserve a hotel, which do you prioritize the most? Price, location, or comfortability? When you reserve a hotel, which do you give the priority to the most? When you reserve a hotel or guest house, which do you give precedence to the most? Which do you give priority to the most? Which do you give precedence to the most? Which do you give precedence to the most? Price, location, comfortability, or review from other customers, visitors. Reserve. Reservation. I think more and more people are prepared for natural disasters with more preserved foods, drinks, and other necessities in reserve. I think more and more people are prepared for natural disasters after the pandemic with preserved food, drinks, and other necessities in reserve in case of emergency. I think more and more people are prepared for emergencies after the pandemic with preserved food, drinks, and other necessities in reserve in case of emergency. Because we all experienced the lack of toilet papers, masks, and other necessities in supermarkets. In order to avoid such a panic again, maybe more and more people are prepared for such situations already. We have to learn from the lessons. There are many lessons I learned. With them, we can approach perfection gradually. It is useless unless we take advantage of the lessons we learned. Reserve. In reserve. In reserve. I wish I had as much money as you in reserve. I wish I had as much money in reserve as you. In reserve. I wish I had as much money in reserve as you. I wish I had as much money in reserve as billionaire. If only I had as much money in reserve as you. If only I had as much money as you. Billionaire. I wish I had as much money in reserve as you. Do you have much money in reserve? Do you have a great deal of money in reserve? Do you have a good deal of money in reserve? Do you have a large amount of money in reserve? Do you have a large amount of money in reserve? Do you have a good deal of money in reserve? Do you have a great deal of money in reserve? Do you have a great deal of money in reserve? In reserve. In reserve. 130 kilogram of rice. 130 kilogram of set of rice. In reserve. In reserve. It is unknown how much money in reserve he has in his bank account. He hasn't made it public. He hasn't made it public. He is rumored to have a great deal of money in reserve in the bank account. In reserve. 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 I wish I had as much money in reserve as you. If only I had as much money in reserve as you, billionaire. If only I had as much money in reserve as billionaire. If only I had as much money in reserve as billionaire. I wish I had as much money in reserve as billionaire. In reserve. The chorus of the song played by the pianist was reserved this time. Maybe something different, something wrong with her. The chorus played by the pianist was reserved this time. Modest, humble. Reserved. Reserved performance. Reserved touch of the sound. Reserved amount of money. Reserved volume of the TV. Reserved sites. Reserved number of guests. Reserved. Are you reserved or greedy? Are you reserved or greedy? Are you reserved or greedy? The society consists of both greedy and reserved people. The society is composed of both greedy and reserved people. The society is made up of both greedy and reserved people. Reserved. A reserved lady, a reserved person, a reserved boy. We tend to be reserved in public places. For example, there are free food served on the table. We hesitate to finish the last one. Have you? I'm sure that all of you have experienced that. If there are free food served on the table, many people will be reserved and avoid finishing the last one. Reserved. Maybe there must be a greedy person in the group and he or she will finish it. Reserved, 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 reserved. A reserved lady, a reserved boy, a reserved, humble, modest, reserved. A reserved performance. The length of the time for karaoke was reserved this time, giving the last train. Because we used to sing until morning, but this time it was modest, humble, reserved, considering our health and the burden for tomorrow. For the next day, for the following day. Reserved seats. I'm sorry, but these are all reserved. Reserved. A reserved lady, a reserved lady, a reserved lady, a reserved lady, a reserved boy, a reserved guy. Reserved guest avoided getting the food first. They gave the opportunity to others. Everybody gave the opportunity to others, so nobody started to eat first. Reserved. Reserved guest avoided giving a question. Reserved. Reserved. reserved, a reserved lady, reserved, 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 a reserved boy. The person was too reserved to ask a question, ending up going home without a question, giving a question. The person was too reserved to give all of the opportunities to ask a question to others, ending up going home without asking a question. Reserved. Stay reserved. Grow. Remain reserved. 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 Leave it reserved. Since I had a disease and I was warned from my doctor to avoid having tense exercises, so I left my daily exercise reserved. I kept my daily exercise reserved until I recovered from the disease perfectly. And since I was warned to avoid having a tense exercise from a doctor, I had kept the exercise reserved. I had left the exercise reserved until I got recovered perfectly. When you are in a hurry, what strategies do you use in order to get to the venue in time? When you are in a hurry, which methods do you use to be in time for the venue? Are you always in a hurry every morning? Are you always in a hurry every morning? Are you always in a hurry every morning? I see salaried workers being in a hurry every morning. Many people will be in a hurry in the morning. Many people will be in a hurry in the morning. Many people will be in a hurry every morning. Many people will be in a hurry in the morning. Many people will be in a hurry in the morning. The gentleman's suit looks great, but it is super tough to put it on. Gentleman's suit look good, but I don't like to put it on. Putting it on itself such a tough, tiring. Putting it on itself 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 is tiring. Gentleman's suit looks great, cool, but putting it on itself is tiring. Putting it on itself is tiring. Putting on suits itself is tiring. Exhausting. Gentleman's suit looks great, but putting it on itself tiring, tough, exhausting. It's no wonder everybody was laughing at me. I wore my t-shirt inside out. But don't forget that this t-shirt can be available inside out too. And some t-shirts can be used inside out. Some clothes can be available inside out too. And some clothes are available inside out too. Investigate into the documents inside out until you find the answer. Upside and down, upside down, upside down. Upside down scale, upside down scenery of the sandbar. You can see the heavenly bridge. And when I take off my clothes, I take them off so that they won't be inside out. In order that they won't be inside out, to ease the laundry work afterwards, later. When I take off my clothes, I try to put them out, try to take them off so that they won't be inside out, in an attempt to, in a bit to ease, alleviate, relieve the laundry work later. Whenever I take off my clothes, I take them off in order that they won't be inside out, to ease the laundry work later. Whenever I take off my clothes, I take them off so that they won't be inside out, to ease the laundry work later. Have you ever been to school on Sunday by mistake? By mistake. I am too clumsy to insert the thread into the hole of the needle. I am too clumsy to insert the thread into the hole of the needle. So I am super bad at knitting. Knitting might be the last work to do for me. I am super clumsy. But I used to be more clumsy. My clumsiness was improved by trying and trying. I saw the tiger leaping over the fence in the circus. I saw the lion leaping through the circle in the circus performance. I saw a lion leaping into the circle in the circus performance. Circus. Have you been to circus? I used to enjoy leaping over the stream with my friends and contested with which of us could leap over longer. Uh, farther. I remember I enjoyed leaping over the stream and contested co- and competed with which of us could leap further. And competed with which of us could leap further. I remember leaping over many obstacles, such as stream, stones, and so on, and competed with which of us could leap further. Leap, tiger leaping over the fence. Horses leaping over the obstacles in the race. I wish I could leap over the hurdles as smoothly as the athlete. The beach is well known for the wide range of shallow waterbed. The beach is famous for the wide range of shallow waterbed. The beach is well known for broad, shallow waterbed, sea waterbed. So the tourist can walk around in the water because of the shallow waterbed. The shallow waterbed of the beach extends very long, broadly. Have you ever seen animals leaping over? I wish I could leap over the hurdles as smoothly as the athletes competing in the track and field nationally, world on behalf of their countries. I wish I could leap over the hurdles in the 100 meters as smoothly as the athletes performing on the track and field on behalf of their countries. I saw a lion leaping into the circle in the circus performance. I saw a lion leaping into the circle in the circus performance. Leap. Leaping over the fence into the river is prohibited by the ordinance, but some people jump deep into the river to celebrate the championship of their supporting baseball team. Leaping over the fence into the river is prohibited, but some passionate, enthusiastic fans of the baseball team sometimes leap into the river in order to celebrate the championship. Shallow sleep will decrease the concentration level. Shallow sleep will decrease the concentration level. Stream under shaped in the V-shaped stream. Stream running in the gorge. Stream running in the running along the V-shaped gorge. Stream. Violent stream flowing along the V-shaped gorge. A violent stream flowing along the V-shaped gorge. I used to stumble a lot, so I still have the injury. I still have the vestige of the injury, especially on the back of joint, leg joint. I used to stumble a lot when I was a kid, so I still have the injury left on my leg joint. It is said that we tend to stumble upon an idea when we are taking a shower. It is said that we tend to stumble upon an idea when we are taking a shower. Please do not stumble. Be careful when you walk in the dark. Please watch out so that you won't. So, in case you should stumble, please be careful and watch out. Look around carefully, for fear that you should stumble. In case you should stumble, lest you should stumble. Please watch out around you carefully. In case you should stumble, for fear that you stumble, lest you should stumble. To turn up the volume, so please twist the button to the right. To turn down the volume of the player, please twist the button to the left, the opposite direction of the watch. In order to turn up the volume of the player, please turn the button to the right, the same direction of the watch. And in order to turn down the volume of the player, please twist or turn the button to the left, the opposite direction of the watch. Clock. Twist. Please warm up and prepare enough so that you won't twist your ankle. Okay? Ankle. I keep shaking my ankle while I'm sleeping. Do you keep moving your ankle while listening to the lecture because of boredness? Do you keep moving your ankle while taking the lesson? Do you keep moving your ankle while taking the lesson, listening to the lesson? Do you keep moving your ankle while you are taking the lesson? Passively. Do you keep moving your ankle because of the boredness during the lesson? Do you keep moving your ankle while you are taking the lesson? Do you keep moving your ankle while listening to the lecture because of boredness? Ankle. Do you keep moving your ankle while you are taking the lesson at the desk? Twist. The alcohol will come out by twisting the button. In order to turn up the volume of the player, please twist the knob to the right, the same direction of the watch. In order to turn down the volume of the player, please twist the knob to the left, the opposite direction of the watch. I used to be scared of entering a restaurant alone, but not now. I used to be scared of ghosts, and I still. I used to be scared of horror movies, and I still. Are you scared of the ghost? Are you also scared of horror movies? I used to be scared of horror movies, but I'm not now. I'm not a coward anymore. I am no longer a coward. I am no longer a coward. I am no longer a coward. I am no longer timid. I am no longer timid. I am no longer timid. I am no longer coward. 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 I am no longer a coward. I am no longer a coward. Is there a law to punish those smoking near innocent people? Is there a law to protect those getting passive smoking from the smokers? Is there something law to protect the passive smoker from smokers nearby? Passive. Both passive and active. I think most of the education is biased towards passive learning. I think most of the education is biased towards passive education. Passive. Passive. Most of the education, I think, is biased towards passive learning, but active learning is very important to have. But most of the education is biased towards passive learning. Passive learner. Passive learner. The teacher didn't tell me and teach me the techniques, skills, knowledge, and so on, in order to make me an active learner. After me becoming an active learner, maybe teacher taught me. So becoming an active learner is very important in the long run. Passive. The passive person. Passive. I hate passive smoking. Is there something law? Is there a law or ordinance to protect those who have been obliged to get passive smoking by accident from smokers? Is there a law or ordinance or something like that to protect innocent people who get passive smoking from smokers? Is there a law or ordinance to protect innocent people who accidentally get, not accidentally, maybe accidentally, by accident get passive smoking from someone smoking nearby? Passive smoking. I don't know how the passive smoking will affect my health. I don't know how much the passive smoking will affect my health. Passive. The CEO of my company seldom if ever visits our branch office. The CEO, Chief Executive Officer of my company, uh, seldom if ever visit my branch office. Seldom if ever is out. Some people seldom if ever smiles. Smile. Some people seldom if ever 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 smile. Some people rarely if ever smile. Some people rarely if ever smile. Some people rarely if ever smile. Some employees seldom if ever takes part in drinking party. Some employees or people seldom if ever take part in drinking party. Some people seldom if ever participate in party. I'm not good at expressing myself in public. Whenever I express myself in public, I make many mistakes with nervousness. Whenever I express myself in public, I make many mistakes with nervousness. In order to conquer the nervousness, my teacher told me to have more experiences. The home tutor tried to convince his student that he would easily pass examination, but he didn't believe it. But he realized it after he had passed it. The head of the entity convinced all of the members that honesty would make good in the long run, in the future, in the end. The head of the entity convinced its members that honesty would bear fruit in the end. The salesperson convinced its client that the price would be the lowest in the region. The salesperson convinced its client that the price of the product would be was the lowest across the country, across the nation. The salesperson convinced the client that the price of the product would be the lowest in the prefecture. I'm not convinced that the shipment would arrive in time. I am not convinced that the shipment would arrive in time. Are you convinced of my success? How dare you could be convinced of my success with no evidence, with no evidence? Do you believe superstitions? Do you believe in superstitions? What are the superstitions? Please tell me some superstitions famous in your country. Please tell me interesting superstitions in your region, community, country, whatever, whatsoever. Superstition. We can notice whether the emails are fake or not by looking at the sentences. The sentences are usually broken and irrational if they are scamming. They are always broken sentences. Or the email addresses are strange. We can tell the true emails from some shops or your acquaintances from the scammings by looking at the irrational sentences, broken vocabularies, broken sentences, and strange email addresses. Irrational. Using the light for 6 tatami room for 12 tatami room is irrational. It will not cover enough. Using the ceiling light for 6 tatami room for 20 tatami room is irrational. It won't cover enough. The academic success convinced me that efforts will not betray me. The TOEIC score convinced me that my effort will not betray me. Effort will not betray me. The result of the examination convinced me that study and effort will not betray me. The score of the examination convinced me that effort and study don't disregard, ignore me. I heard the story of my teacher's relatives who took the entrance examination of the university. And at the end of the final examination, his fingers were trembling with nervousness because he was about to pass the examination. But he lost to 2 or 3 points left. He was closely to the pass, but he failed. I heard a story of my teacher's relatives who was taking the entrance examination of the very renowned university, and his hands were trembling with nervousness because he was almost He was almost passing the entrance examination. Are you trembling with the coldness or nervousness? Have you experienced trembling with fear, nervousness? And since I know the hardships, predicaments, hindrances of trembling with fear, I don't want to get fear again. I will take care of my health. Since I know the difficulty, predicament, hardships, and toughness of getting fear, I was trembling, even with a lot of blankets around me. I was trembling even with a lot of blankets. So I don't want to get fear anymore. I was trembling even with a lot of blankets around me with fear. I was trembling even with a lot of blankets around me because of fear. The vaccination called Tamiflu worked well. Thanks to the vaccination medicine, I could recover soon. I tend to be depressed at the thought of work to be done. Whenever I reminisce over a pile of work, at the thought of a pile of work to be done by the end of the particular date, I get depressed. I easy to get depressed, especially when I'm on a vacation, at the thought of an task, at the thought of many tasks on my desk. I easy to get depressed, pessimistic, at the thought of a pile of tasks on my desk to be done by the particular date. At the thought of, I easily get depressed and pessimistic at the thought of a pile of work to be done by the particular date. At the thought of, I easy to get depressed at the thought of something I don't want to work on. I easy to stressed at the thought of something I have to dispose of immediately. I easy to get upset, mad, at the thought of something I have to dispose of immediately, which will definitely steal my precious time. Okay, I will finish speaking here. Thank you for watching. See you next time. See you!